Okay, well, with that, I want to welcome you to the regular meeting of August 3rd of the Napa County LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission. And could we have roll call, please?
Chair Painter,
Here.
Vice Chair Ramos,
Here.
Commissioner Cottrell. Here. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Khan is standing in for Commissioner Crosswhite, who is absent today.
Yes.
Commissioner Doring.
Here.
Commissioner Gallagher is absent today. Commissioner Khan.
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Oro is absent today. Back to you, Chair Painter.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you could join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and stand if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, I'd like to just see if we have any disclosures under the Political Reform Act, often known as the Levine Act. I'll start with Commissioner Doring.
None.
None. Yeah, I have no disclosures.
No disclosures.
I have none.
Okay, thank you so much. We're on item 4 now, which is approval of the agenda. Do any commissioners have any questions or rearrangement on items on the agenda? And staff, are there any additional items on the agenda? Okay, very good. So we'll approve the agenda as written. Thank you. We're now to item 5, which is public comment. Now, this is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Just so that you're clear, the commission would like to hear from you, but we are strictly prohibited by state law in taking any further action or discussion of items. If there are folks who have general public comment, now is the time. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for having me here. My name is Mike Despain. I'm the CEO of AP Trident. We are the ones that did your fire EMS study or in the progress of that. And I heard from your last board meeting that there was some consternation of that project. I'm also here representing Kurt Hinke, who is 50% owner of the company. He's a longtime Napa County resident, multi-generational here in the county. He couldn't be here due to a medical issue with his wife. So I'm here speaking on his behalf. But at the end of the day, what I wanted to make sure that the board understood was that we understood there was some concern from the board on the timeliness of that report, but I wanted to share, we provided significant documentation, a 63-page historical documentation and about an 8-page rebuttal that basically showed that we have progressed in that report as fast as we could given the information that we were given. In some cases, there's still some data missing. We made a choice to do the best we could with what we have with permission from LAFCO staff. At the end of the day, the report in draft form was provided almost 6 months ago now in January, waiting for staff to tell us, go left, go right, is it good, is it bad? And I understand there's been some issue back and forth with County Fire and some other issues on what should be added to that report, if it should be more contemporary than it was. So we have been waiting for just direction from that. So there was no delay on our part in the sense that since January, we were just waiting for staff report. And I'm here to explain that we're committed to finishing the project. And we would say it as simple as this, the project could be completed as is, or we could expand the scope and discuss that if we need to. We want a quality report. We did a lot of extra work on this report, things that were missing in the record. We had to take some finance reports back to the 50s and some sphere of influence back to the 80s, well outside the scope of work. We did that at cost. So at the end of the day, we're not making any money on this report at this point, but we don't want to leave it hanging. We would love to have the opportunity to complete the report, present it, whether it's the current report in draft form or an expanded report. So with that, I know you can't comment on it, but I just want to know we came here in person to tell you we're committed to this. And I think there was some misrepresentation that occurred during that last meeting. So with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your coming and speaking to us in person.
Thank you so much.
Any other general comments?
Good afternoon, Jim Hinton. This is the first time I've been to LAFCO in long time. And something that's always been on my mind that I've always wanted to talk about, but I really have never just had the bandwidth to take it on is I don't have a population chart in front of me for Napa County, but there's 5 cities. The city of Napa makes up half the population of the county. American Canyon is the second largest city. Am I right? You are right. So every year or 2 years, we rotate between Napa having a seat at the table, which, do we have a seat? Yes, we do have a seat at the table. And then it goes to American Canyon for a couple years. Then it goes back to Napa, then back to American Canyon. We keep passing the ball back and forth. But St. Helena and Up Valley, the 3 little cities with probably a smaller population than American Canyon, let alone Napa, they get to stay here and they get to be involved in every decision all the time. Why doesn't the city of Napa? The city of Napa has the most resources involved in all this stuff. The city of Napa should be the one with the permanent seat, not Up Valley. It's not fair to the population of Napa, the county. We're the ones that, like I said, provide most of your services. The rotating back and forth. I mean, look at St. Helena right now. It's a mess. It's a mess. Napa should be there every time, not St. Helena. Okay, in the future, you should change the charter so that Napa has a permanent seat.
Thank you. Any other general public comments? Seeing none.
Somebody's coming up.
Oh, somebody's coming up. I'm sorry. Going too quickly.
Hello, my name's Michael Weinberg, and I am a Napa resident, and I'm here to speak about Skyline Park and the value of the park as it exists today and the land.
That's on the agenda.
So this is general public comment?
I'm sorry, am I mistaken? I was told it was under general public comment. I apologize. That was the instructions I was given. I will go sit down if it's on the agenda.
Well, we are considering the, under item 7A, the request for an amendment to the sphere of influence.
Okay, no, I apologize.
No problem,
The
no problem.
miscommunication.
Yeah. We'll hear from you in a bit. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, I've just been advised we actually are not able to set up another room. So I would just maybe look to county staff to let us know that we're in good shape in terms of the number of people that we have in this room. From a fire code perspective, looks like maybe the answer to that is yes. Okay. Thank you for that information. So if there is no further general public comment, we will move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the consent items. On our calendar today, we have 2 actionable items and 3 informational items. Are there any members of the commission who would like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, and any members of the public who would like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
So moved. Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Doring, second by Commissioner Cottrell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries and the consent items are approved. Now we will move to item 7A on our agenda, which is, I think, the reason why many of you are here in the room. So thank you for taking the time to be here. Just sort of a run of show. The first, we will hear from our staff, our executive officer, with a staff report giving us some information. Then I'll ask commissioners for any disclosures. We may have an opportunity for commissioners to ask clarifying questions, but at that point, we will move into public comment. We do have quite a few people who would like to speak, so we did ask for speaker cards. Our clerk will announce 5 names, and if those 5 could come up, we'll try to efficiently get folks to the microphone. All I would ask is that if your comment and information has been shared, please share it with us to the extent you can. You're allowed 3 minutes. You don't have to use 3 minutes. We'd like to get through everybody's public comment and hear you. So With that, I will turn it over to our executive officer.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and everyone who is joining us today in the audience. This item involves a request to amend the sphere of influence of the Napa Sanitation District to include an approximate 5.2 acre parcel of undeveloped state-owned land located adjacent to Skyline Wilderness Park along Imola Avenue at the southern terminus of Penny Lane. The applicant is requesting this amendment to support a future affordable housing project that would ultimately require public sewer service. And the applicant is a combination of two developing firms, Collective Operations and PEP Housing, and they are in attendance today, and I expect they will want an opportunity to provide public comments on this item. This request involves a single undeveloped parcel that is currently designated agriculture, watershed, and open space under the county general plan, and as mentioned, is located adjacent to Skyline Wilderness Park. Future development being contemplated consists of approximately 185 affordable residential units. Today's action, however, is not an approval of housing. It is not an annexation. It is not an environmental review. Today's question is much narrower. Should this parcel become part of Napa Sanitation District's sphere? And that's the decision before the commission today. This slide shows a recent on-the-ground photo of the property, so we can see the affected territory is undeveloped and currently in open space use. Next, I'd like to quickly share LAFCO's mission and purpose, as it is so relevant to this application before us today. This item illustrates the very reason the legislature created LAFCOs. Our job is not simply to determine whether sewer service can be extended. Our responsibility is much broader than that. The legislature directs LAFCO to encourage the logical and orderly local government boundaries while balancing several equally important public interests. This includes discouraging urban sprawl, preserving agriculture and open space, encouraging efficient government services, and recognizing the importance of housing opportunities. These objectives occasionally point in different directions, which is exactly why these decisions require independent judgment rather than automatic approvals. This application presents legitimate public interests on both sides. On one hand, there is an acknowledged need for affordable housing in Napa County. Napa Sanitation District appears to have sufficient wastewater capacity, and public sewer service would eventually be needed if development occurs on this site. Now, on the other hand, the parcel remains designated as agriculture and open space under the county general plan. The staff report provides a summary of local policy considerations as they relate to this sphere amendment request. LAFCO policy has historically been cautious about expanding urban service areas into lands carrying those agricultural or open space designations because boundary decisions have lasting regional consequences beyond a single project. This slide shows us local sphere of influence policy, section 5A1, which explicitly states land defined or designated in the County of Napa General Plan land use map as agricultural or open space shall not be approved for inclusion within any local agency's sphere of influence for purposes of new development unless the action is consistent with the objectives listed in section 3 of this policy shown on the next slide. Essentially, what this says is the commission may make an exception if the commission makes a written statement that the action would be promoting the logical and orderly extension of public services for orderly development. And so that's in our policy now. Staff also recognizes there is significant public interest surrounding Skyline Wilderness Park. Comments received after the posting of the agenda have been submitted by the applicant as well as several members of the public, and those comments have all been compiled and provided to the commission prior to this meeting, and they are also in your supplemental folders. Notably, many residents expressed a strong desire to preserve the character of the area and protect open space surrounding the park. On the other hand, the applicant provided additional information related to the site's inclusion in the county's housing element, indicating that housing is appropriate here. The commission's role is not to choose one value over the other, but rather to determine whether this proposed sphere amendment is consistent with the legislature's direction as well as the commission's own adopted local policies. Now, with all of this in mind, after reviewing the statutory factors, the county general plan, and the commission's local policies, staff believes there is sufficient policy basis for the commission to deny the request at this time for the sphere amendment. However, this is ultimately a policy decision entrusted to the commission. And for these reasons, the agenda includes alternative resolutions allowing the commission to approve or deny the amendment, or the commission may continue the matter to a later date after considering public testimony and commission deliberation. With that overview, I would respectfully recommend opening the public hearing and receiving testimony before this matter returns to the commission for discussion and direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brendan. That was a good presentation. Before we go to testimony, I just want to see if the commission has any very specific clarifying questions for staff. No. Okay. Well, what we've done is we have asked for folks to fill out a speaker card. If you have not, you can fill one out now, or you'll have an opportunity to speak. But to keep things orderly moving forward, we're going to have our staff call the first 5 names, and in no particular order, please come up to the microphone. You do have 3 minutes. There is a clock right up above, and we would ask you to just be respectful of the 3-minute timing. First 5 names, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can we have Nicole Gordillo, Hannah Stolcherik? I'm sure I didn't say that right. I'm sorry, Hannah. Cody Young, Peter Menzel, and Ingrid.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Nicole Gordillo. I'm a field representative with the North Coast State Carpenters Union Local 701, which covers Napa County. I'm honored to speak to you today on behalf of our members. Let me share a little bit about myself. I'm a 12-year member that has come from a journey of growth and success that was made possible by the support of the Carpenters Union. As I look back, I can't help but be proud of the power of the collective solidarity of the Carpenters Union. It began in my apprenticeship, a moment in my life where Carpenters Union opened doors of opportunities. Through training, mentorship, hands-on experience, and I'm honored with the skills I have learned that I'll use throughout my life. As this project moves forward, it presents the opportunity to create a lot of good jobs for our brothers and sisters here in the community. That's why we ask the developer to hire a responsible general contractor who is qualified with meaningful pre-qualification language adopted in order to avoid bad actors, the kind that misclassify workers, to avoid paying benefits, unsafe jobs, and in worst case, wage theft. So I ask you, will the Imola affordable apartments be built responsibly? Thank you for your time. Oh, I do have something to add. So we try to reach out to PEP Housing, the CEO, Jennifer Litwalk, and Collective Opportunities CEO, Ochia Song, but we have not received any response yet. So hopefully we'll hear from them. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi there. My name is Dr. Cody Young. I'm a chiropractor down the street. I've seen a lot of people here. I think there's a couple of familiar faces that I see walking around the avenues. First off, thank you to the commission, the board, all the staff. I appreciate you guys doing your duty and the responsible stewardship of Napa County. One thing I wanted to mention was basically the point of the board was to basically inhibit urban sprawl, preserving open space and prime lands. From the picture that was just showed, Skyline Park is prime land and it is open space. So I grew up riding horses there. I don't know if Boy Scouts is still a thing, but when I was a Cub Scout, we went out there. We'd have Napa Fire out there on hot summer days. They would shoot some water at us, cool us down. So there is a lot of use in the community for this area. I do a fair amount of sitting around waiting for animals to show up, and one of the animals that I've come to be friends with, I think, is Oscar the otter, and he lives right next door to the park. I didn't know that otters have legs. I thought they just swam around, but apparently they can walk on land, and I see that sucker now get out of the pond, go upstream, get out of the pond, go downstream, and the environmental impact of sewage and this affordable housing project, I believe, would be a detriment to Oscar the otter. I'm really not super political. Most of my concern is about public health, and whenever there's development, there's also pollution. I think we can all agree on that. And I don't want to hound you guys too much, but I know it's difficult as a political figure to vote against public housing because of the perception that maybe you're not for the poor or the needy or the lower class or even the middle class in Napa, right? It's a very expensive real estate market. So I understand that, and I don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think being a great politician is always a compliment if you have to it's not a dig if you have to put your morals and more of that fiduciary responsibility on the sideline to manage your public perception. So please vote responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello. Go Oscar. My name is Ingrid. I have a very quick question. 9 miles north of here is a large state property, the vet's home. Would that ever be considered for PPP housing instead of using a state park? Thank you.
Thank you. And just, two things. First of all, I appreciate everybody wanting to clap, but what we'd like to do is allow people to speak. You can certainly do something like this. If you have questions, we'll be taking notes and we'll address those at the end of public testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I put a poster up here for you to see? Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Peter Menzel. I live at 199 Cruiser Lane. I support affordable housing, but a fenced and dense city block of 3-story apartment buildings surrounded by parking, built far from services and stores and transportation, is not the answer for future residents or for the community members who use and deeply value Skyline Wilderness Park. The busy Amola Avenue corridor with few sidewalks, the probable costly extension of the water and sewer, the close proximity to a high-risk wildfire area. This is not an ideal location, yet it appears to be the plan of first choice by the state or of no choice in the case of Napa County. At first, I wondered if there had been a mistake in selecting this site because there are better sites available that have not been explored and evaluated. But in all the official documents I've read, this parcel is described only as bare land, surplus bare land. No mention that it is part of our Skyline Wilderness Park since 1979. The APN and lot lines were carved out of the park's flat frontage land by deliberate engineering, not unlike gerrymandering. This is not just surplus land discovery. I've lived a few miles from the park for over 40 years without knowing much of its history. Now I do. In 1979, the entire park frontage land was declared surplus and slated for private sale and development. Concerned citizens stepped in. They drafted a constitution, persuaded the state to lease the land to the county, and opened the park in 1983. Unlike any other Napa County park, it has operated without virtually a single dollar of public funding for 43 years. Its operating expenses are generated entirely through admission fees, camping, event revenue, donations, and aided by thousands of hours of volunteer labor. A substantial percent of the income is generated by that 5.2 acres of bare surplus land. All this is overseen by the Skyline Park Citizens Association, a nonprofit 501c3. Last year, Napa County purchased all of the 874 acres for $7.26 million, an investment meant to protect this land as parkland forever.
And if you could just work to wrap up your comments, we do want to try to meet the 3 minutes.
Yes, I
Thank you.
see. I've got 20 seconds. I can do it in 15. That purchase tells you exactly how much this community and Napa County government values this land. And now concerned citizens are stepping up again. Your staff report recommends denial of the requested sphere of influence amendment. I respectfully urge you to follow that recommendation. Please take into account the history of the park, respect the goal of its founders and of this community to preserve this land from development. Parkland used for housing can never be parkland again. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Mr.
listening.
Menzel. Okay, next speaker, please. Good, yeah, well done.
Good afternoon, everyone, commissioners and my neighbors. My name is Hanna Stolarczyk, and I live at 2010 North 3rd Avenue in Coombsville. And I have been enjoying Skyline Park ever since I moved to Napa in 2015, so that's several years ago. And I am all for affordable housing. I just strongly believe this is the right idea in the wrong location. And as you know, I have already heard the commissioner emphasize that this is an open land. It's designated as agriculture, watershed, and open space. And the one thing, as I was going through the documents pertaining to today's meeting, I noticed that the commission should consider agricultural preserve and intent of voters in passing Measure P specifically, and apply it prior to taking any formal action to SOIs. And the county staff responded that the affected territory, so this parcel that you see, where the developer wants to put 185 apartment units, meaning in excess of 500 people would be living there, polluting the environment, making noise, displacing the wildlife that lives there. So the affected territory is subject to Measure P, which is relevant to the county's land use designations. Changing the land use designation in the county general plan from agricultural to non-agricultural requires approval by Napa County voters. So I respectfully ask that the commission takes that into consideration, and if this plan is to go forward, this project, this should be put to the county voters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So we will call the next 5 names.
Can we have Jim Wallen, Ashley Teradista, Chaim Potter, Ken Lambert, and Audrey Shallon?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jim Wallen. I'm the Vice President of PEP Housing, which is now PH Development Group. And I just wanted to, in less than 3 minutes, just go through some of the staff report's omissions. Staff cited only the county's current zoning designation, but did not mention the site is listed as a housing inventory site in county's housing element, a key component of the general plan. The county included the site in its RENA goals. It is listed on page 294 as a RENA site. In the key, the county's zoning designation does not apply to this site. It is a state-owned land. The county's own general plan, pages 315 and 16 of the housing element, states the state-owned site is not subject to the county's general plan and zoning. What the general plan actually says is that housing element lists the Mola Avenue site on its housing inventory list, pages 320 through 322. It is a key goal under the county's housing development programs. Program H-4M, page 72, states the county will work with the state to develop at least 100 affordable housing units on the Mola site by 2031. Advocate for housing to address the community's special housing needs, inform developers about housing fund monies available, help facilitate water and wastewater service commitments from the city of Napa and Napa Sanitation, and monitor the progress. The bottom line on the general plan, relying on an outdated zoning map that doesn't apply to state-owned land while ignoring the county's own written and approved general plan goals, is misleading. The site is clearly a key county housing priority. LAFCO mission alignment. It does, at the very last sentence, state providing housing for persons and families of all incomes is an important factor in promoting orderly development. I urge you to approve the SOI amendment, aligns with the county's own housing element goals, aligns with state housing goals, provides critically needed affordable homes served by a district with confirmed capacity, and the commission should approve the SOI amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Shallon. I'm 16 years old and a captain of the Rebobs, our local mountain biking team that practices at Skyline with kids from 6th to 12th grade. I've been on the team for 5 years now. And during my second year on the team, I was advocating against the same issue. I stood here in the same room as a 13-year-old and was told by Miss Ramus that the city needed to put down a certain number of acres that could be built on. What she also told me was that even though Skyline was being approved, this project, these housing apartments, would never happen. Skyline is a place that's not quite like any other. There's horseback riding, mountain biking, hiking, and running. Having all of that readily available to Napa locals and to the youth in this community helps people mentally, physically, and emotionally. I have seen this at JP's Backyard Ultra, where people come from all over to run at Skyline in the support of our community and of somebody with cancer. People park in that same area to run at JP's Backyard Ultra, where the housing would go, the same place where Bottle Rock camping occurs annually. The Rebobs, the Fire Explorers, and neighbors help the park with their biggest revenue generator of the year. Not only that, but it's a great way for kids to get volunteer hours and help out in their community. Furthermore, the Rebobs use that space twice a week for 6 months out of the year. I get to see my teammates progress in skills and mountain biking games in that area since I don't get to see it happen on the trails. In truth, there is no place in Napa or Northern California that does all of that. I've been going there since before I could walk on my mom's back, and that's awesome in my opinion. I ask you, now as a 16-year-old that I am, and as a 13-year-old that I was, please do not build there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Chime Potter. Again, I would sort of reflect what other people have said. I am not discounting the need for housing to be in Napa at a rate that everyone can afford, but Skyline Park is a part of our community that helps create balance with open space, with the availability for youth and other people, other groups, to use the space in a way that I don't believe we have in another option in our community that will provide those services for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, I'm Ashley Teradista, and I am a community member that lives in that area. One thing I'd really like us to take a moment to think about is, yes, there was a code written that we needed more housing, that this is an area that was considered. These things were written at one point in time, but we also need to think about the point in time that we're at right now. What can we do to increase housing that is needed? I'm a homeowner and I feel it. It's very painful. I know that I cannot move houses and stay in this area. I'm a school teacher. But we also need to think about what the space is used for and why we're using it, and not bringing any more people to an area that's already being used beautifully, open, and for a community that needs it desperately. Yes, we need places for people to live, but there are other locations. And just because a code was written at one point that made sense then doesn't mean it makes sense now.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, and then we'll call the next 5 names.
Hello, my name is Ken Lambert. I am a 35-year volunteer with Scouting America, used to be Boy Scouts of America. And I've been doing this in Napa and Solano County that entire time. Our big challenge is finding available space to do the kind of scouting programs that are so important to our youth. Losing this opportunity that we've used now for many years will be devastating. As you already kind of heard, the choices are limited, and they're becoming more limited every single day. When we're trying to get our youth the kind of experience, outdoor experiences that are so important to their development, finding those opportunities is forcing us to go further and further and further, and the stress on the families is becoming nearly unbearable. We need opportunities like Skyline Park presents and has presented for years. We need to maintain those as much as we can. Losing those does not help us, and it hurts the youth. And we really need to find better alternatives for having our housing mix with the available open space for them to recreate in. I want you to picture, this didn't happen very long ago. I think it was mentioned just a minute ago. In that very space, picture bottle rockets. You don't think bottle rockets are a big deal, but for those kids, an absolutely wonderful experience. You get them out there, they pull the cord, and that rocket shoots up way up. I can't do that anywhere else. I do that in a neighborhood, that bottle ends up in somebody's swimming pool. No, not a good idea. But out in a place like this, they can run. They can do all the things that you want them to do. And it also gives us opportunities to provide service to the community. So we don't have a lot of opportunities for this. We want more. Losing this is not going to help us. I hope that you are able to factor that into the decision, a very tough decision that you have to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll call the next 5 names, please.
Can we have Lynn Wyman, Abigail Lord, Kendall Lord, Waija Song, and Sandra Schenk?
Come on up, no particular order. If you're ready, go ahead.
My name is Lynn Wyman. I live at 1081 Green Valley Road, Napa. I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning with 10 years development review experience for the city of Lakewood, Colorado, population 155,000. I'm in favor of affordable housing in an appropriate site. The Surplus Land Act guides how public land should be dispersed and sold. The Surplus Land Act acknowledges there is insufficient available land for recreation use in California. It recognizes the importance of making land available for open space, park, and recreation purposes. Taking this 5.26 acres of actively used parkland for affordable housing project goes against the premise of adding public land for open space, park, and recreational purposes. The 5.26 acres activities bring in approximately 20% of the revenue that supports the maintenance of the park. With the 5.26 acres, the park is financially self-sustaining. The State Department of Hospital owns approximately 138 acres on Mola and Saskell. There are parcels there that are appropriate for housing. The alternative sites would be less dense, have mature trees, and provide more aesthetic housing units for the residents. The master plan for Skyline Park Wilderness Park was adopted in 2009. It shows this 5.26 acres as part of the park. So please let the 5.26 acres be part of Skyline Park and develop one of the alternative sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Abigail, and I'm 15 years old. I'm going to my sophomore year at Vintage High School, and I use Skyline a tremendous amount, not only for myself, but I've seen the entire community use it. And the placement of housing in Skyline will greatly impact all parts of this community, especially the children and young adults today. Skyline is used by many people, including the horse community in our area, as well as the Rebobs. With housing, you will also need adequate parking, which will give the community less space to use. Losing space for the community gives us younger generations less opportunities. Please remember that my generation and those to come are the ones who will be impacted by your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Next speaker.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I am Kendall Lord. I am Abigail Lord's mother. She's also a twin, Eli Lord. They're both 15. Unfortunately, he was sick and couldn't be here today. We own a condo right by the outlets. We have an extensive parking problem, and living in a very small area with a very small backyard, we have extensively personally used Skyline Park. We own a horse. We often have the horse out there. My son is a very active member of the Rebobs, as well as hiking, mountain biking, and cross-country running. We have used it for Boy Scout camping, Girl Scout camping, meeting with families. Additionally, my opportunity to watch this be a place our community can come together. I really thought when my kids would be this age, all the parents who coach and mentor these kids are all parents. What I have learned is that is not the case. You show up to the Rebobs and you've got 15 coaches who don't even have kids, who is interested in, and somebody else is going to have to give the exact number. It's not 15, but you have an extensive amount of coaches there helping, giving back to our community, so our kids are enjoying our community, as well as the horse. You have an extensive number of horse advocates that are there helping the younger generation. Personally, it's been a space I have watched children blow off steam, take a step away from the excitement, what's happening. So it's given mental health. For anyone who's worked with horses, you can know how important space is. I mean, the simplest thing can be such a distraction. And as we're working to have our children step away from the computer, we need to give them options, because looking at them and asking them not to spend their time on the computer, but giving them no possible alternatives is a disservice to our community. And as parents, I mean, it's pushing us out, right? This goes away. We find other communities to drive to. And then eventually we're just finding other communities to live. And that's not what I want for my community. I just really, my son, I said, what would you say if you could be here? And he said, Mom, I would say I've gone to several meetings and I feel like they don't hear me and they're not worried about me. Prove him wrong, please. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, board. Nice to see all of you here today, especially all my wonderful neighbors. Advocating for open space to remain open. I'd like you to hearken back to Yellowstone Park. Sandra Schenk. I'd like you to hearken back to Yellowstone Park and Yosemite, rather. Saving Yosemite has been a jewel for the state of California and the nation. Skyline Park is a jewel for the state of California. It wouldn't be much of a jewel, however, if there was a fire and 185 units, plus all of the people that live in those units, cramming onto Imola Avenue and all of the ancillary arteries clamoring on trying to get out of the danger. Do we want to be Coffee Park? Do we want to have another conflagration race through this valley and make a horrible disaster of it all? Certainly not. So when we first started the meeting, you suggested fire code perspective. I'd like that to resonate with you because there are no sidewalks available for people to get out, even if they are on foot. And with 185 units, I understand that there's only going to be parking for one car in that, for all of those units, per unit. Take the bus. No, people don't take the bus. Look at it. So please consider the danger. Would you want your kids to live out there or your grandkids? Keep it a Skyline Park, our Yosemite. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Weijia Song. I'm with CO, and I'm a proponent of the Sphere of Influence update for the Imola Avenue site. While we appreciate staff time in bringing this item to the Commission today, we do want to point out a few inconsistencies in the report, especially statements regarding the general plan. We also wanted to note, in terms of background, that the state and the county negotiated the sale of 800 acres of Skyline Park to the county. And as part of that negotiation, the county and the state agreed that the state would retain 5 acres for the delivery of affordable housing. 5 acres for 800 acres. Now, to address the staff report directly, staff cited references to the county's current zoning designation for the site, but did not mention that this site is listed as a housing inventory site in the county's housing element. And housing element is a key component of the general plan. This site in particular is included in the county's own regional housing needs allocation goals, meaning the county receives credit for delivering affordable units on these sites. This is listed on page 294 of the housing element. The county's general plan also, on page 315 to 316 of the housing element, states that this state-owned site is not subject to the county's general plan and zoning requirements. I also wanted to note that the county has also not only identified it as a housing inventory site, but it is a housing development program goal. Program H4M on page 72 of the housing element states, and I quote, "The county will work with the state to develop at least 100 affordable housing units on the Imola site by 2031. Napa County will help to facilitate the process of securing commitments from the City of Napa and Napa Sanitation for water and wastewater services for the site and will monitor progress," end quote. This site is clearly identified in the general plan as one of the county's key housing goals. Looking at the county's unupdated zoning map that does not apply to state-owned land, while ignoring the county's own clearly written and approved goals in the county's general plan is misleading. The site is clearly identified as a housing inventory site on page 320 and 3 to 322 of the housing element. And I also wanted just to remind the mission and purpose of LAFCO, which staff mentioned in their report under General Code Section 56001, states that the legislature also recognizes that providing housing for persons and families of all incomes is an important factor of promoting orderly development. This project is 100% affordable to families earning less than 60% area median income. These are teachers, firefighters, that would very much need housing in the county of Napa. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next 5 names, please.
Can we have Michael Weinberg, Becca Biskiner, Susan Crosby, Jim Hinton, Everett Phillips?
Hello, my name is Michael Weinberg, and I'm a longtime Napa resident and longtime user of Skyline Park. I'm there dozens of times a year. And while that's a beautiful picture we've got here to look at, I just want to give you a little bit of information to help support a decision to approve the staff recommendation. Because while that's a pretty picture, it doesn't reflect what actually happens on that land throughout the year. And one event I'm speaking in particular about is JP's Backyard Ultra, which I helped organize. Jonathan Pasquale, the founder and race director, is not here today. He's actually receiving treatment, cancer treatment today. He's 4.5 years into a 5-year terminal diagnosis. And he founded this event to raise awareness to his type of cancer, which is paraganglioma. And this event started with sort of just an idea he had that his cancer, of which 4 or 5 people are diagnosed with each year, gets no attention, no research. And so he wanted to find a way to change that and try and find a cure, or at least prolong the lives of other people who might be diagnosed after him, which brings us to JP's Backyard Ultra. In the 4th year, this event has grown. It's a free event, and people come to run, to hike, to walk, to sit and enjoy. We feed everybody, but people don't just show up. They drive there because, as other people have mentioned, as you're aware, we're not a public transit community, and this country isn't a public transit community. And so there will be 300 and something cars parked in the meadow, in that field. And without that ability to have parking there, we can't do this event. And last year, we raised over $100,000. We had over 600 participants, raised over $100,000 for research for paraganglioma. And that will not happen any longer because there is no other place in Napa to have an event like this. So urge you to support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Becca Bisconner. Hi, Bilia. I'm a mom and a proud Napa neighbor. I've lived on Patton Avenue for 18 years, so I've been a block and a half from Skyline, and I've raised kids there. And I also am, I work for Parents Can, so I support families that are incredibly under-resourced right here in Napa. And I have to say that it's a nonprofit. It's a very tiny, small nonprofit. And 75% of our families that we support are under the poverty line. And one thing I want to say is that the nonprofit PEP is out of Santa Rosa. And, you know, Santa Rosa is not very far away, but actually in this case, it is quite far away because they have $12 million in assets and their CEO makes more than $250,000 a year. That is a lot more than our CEO makes. So what I wanted to say was when we talk about affordable housing, affordable housing is not 30 to 60% of market rate, which is what they're talking about. We are talking about affordable housing that is something that somebody who is below the poverty level can afford. And affordable housing is something for somebody who is going to be putting a child in school and is going to have to make it with only one car and is not going to be able to get their child to school all the way across town when their kid goes to school, at Napa High or at Vintage, or even all the way at Silverado. And the closest elementary school, by the way, is Phillips. That's pretty far if your kid is little and you have to get across a mola. If you're from Santa Rosa, you probably don't understand that a mall is a really busy street and your little kid can't cross that street, but I understand. So what I want to say is we need affordable housing. We need affordable housing for people who really need truly affordable housing, but that is not the place to put it. We need a place where people can be with real families and real little kids and get real services. And we need Skyline Park to stay what it's meant to be, which is a real park. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for holding this hearing. I'm Susan Crosby. I've lived in Napa for 26 years. I was a school teacher at the Napa Valley Language Academy. It was really fun. And there have been so many eloquent and on-point remarks today that I feel I'm free to tell you a story from Genesis about Pharaoh's dream. When Joseph was taken into captivity, he was in prison, and Pharaoh had a dream of 7 fat cows going down to the river to drink, followed by 7 thin and wasted cows. And then he had another dream of 7 sheaves of wheat that were robust and full of grain, and then followed by 7 sere and withered sheaves of stalks of wheat. So Pharaoh was concerned, pre-science era, and he sent around to his advisors to get an interpretation. And they found this guy in prison, Joseph, who'd already figured out what the dream meant. And he told Pharaoh 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And guess what? Pharaoh took him seriously and built warehouses for the grain, enough to feed the people of Egypt when the 7 years of famine came, and also to give to other nations and peoples around. Now, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. This grassland doesn't have very many trees on it, but it's grassland. Grassland sequesters carbon like crazy. It's full of bacteria that just gobble the stuff up, and root systems that talk to each other and make more of that happen. We are living in a time, we don't have to look at our dreams. We have the UN Commission on Climate Change. We have mosquitoes in Iceland. We have our own experience of reading the headlines about the devastating fires and temperatures in France and Italy and Spain this summer. We have our own personal experience to look at. Climate change is not just coming, it's here. Our economy is changing and will change more. And we need to look, every decision that we make, that you make for us, needs to be seen through the perspective of what effect it will have on our future. One of the young women today came here as a 13-year-old. At a 16-year-old, she saw that this thing was happening, this thing she was told would not happen. Where will adequate water come from in the future? We have no guarantees. Why are we building all these units in a place that is doing the job that nothing else really can do, of taking carbon out of the air and mitigating climate change? So please deny the requested amendment as a way to protect our beautiful parkland and maintain it as a means for generating income for all of Skyline Park, as well as the sustainable future of our county and our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next speaker.
Jim Hinton, 45 Spring Street, Napa. Wow. I've spent, Belia and the newspaper, Barry can tell you, hundreds of hours in this room over the years. And I've been gone for over 3 years. And I thought, God, I don't miss it. But you know, listening to the people, it's been wonderful. I do start to feel I'm missing it. And because I decided I'm running for city council in District 3 a couple weeks ago. And I was kind of regretting, gosh, I got to come sit through my first meeting now in a long time. But it's fun. This is great. So I remember in 2016, we had the Save Skyline meetings, going out there to the skyline and listening to all the people talk about how we need to save this and save this. And, you know, LAFCO is not the county. This is the separation of powers. Unfortunately, we only have one vote with Beth. Both supervisors aren't from Napa. You're American Canyon, you're Up Valley, a public member. But this is happening near Napa. This affects Napa the most. And if we're going to build a good city or county, you want to put the big affordable housing projects next to the city services, not out in the middle of nowhere on a 2-lane road and then say, oh, well, we don't want it in St. Helena. We don't want affordable housing up there. We'll just force it on Napa and we'll make Napa build out their services out there. How about we go with the diversity? Put the project in St. Helena. Let St. Helena give them police and fire and sewer and water. Give them the water from St. Helena. Let them get some challenges. We're building, look around Napa, we're building lots. There's probably even more spots available than way out there. You know, just because Gavin and Alfredo cut a deal doesn't mean the city of Napa has to go all the way out there and scratch their back for those two guys, okay? Let St. Helena or let County of Napa, you come up with your own sewer services, your new one, and you do it all for Gavin and Alfredo. Stop kicking the can to Napa, you know? Give us a break.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Commission and staff. My name is Everett Phillips with Collective Operations. We are here today asking for approval of the SOI amendment to allow sewer service to a site that the state and county have already identified for affordable housing, as well as a motion that was recommended for approval by LAFCO staff this April as part of the Amolas Avenue study area. I have just a few points. First, state law is pretty clear. Government Code Section 56001 directs LAFCO to consider housing for all income levels as a core part of orderly development and to accommodate housing where public services can be efficiently provided. This site can be efficiently served. Sewer infrastructure already exists on Amola Avenue, and the district has confirmed capacity. Second, supportive policy decisions have already been made by the state and county. The Department of General Services identified this surplus property for affordable housing, and the Department of Housing and Community Development certified the housing element, which was voted on and approved by the county. This housing element includes this site in its housing inventory and recognizes that development of the site would not be subject to county zoning or general plan land use designations. Third, today's action is not project approval. You're not being asked to approve housing, you're not being asked to amend the general plan, and you're certainly not being asked to waive CEQA. You're simply considering whether this property should be eligible for sewer service. Environmental review, land use approvals, and project-specific issues, including concerns of fire safety, will be addressed through the entitlement and permitting process. This is about the sphere of influence. Finally, I'd like to address the staff's report's concern regarding the agriculture, watershed, and open space designation. The staff report emphasizes one element of the general plan, but gives no weight to another, the adopted housing element, which specifically identifies the Amola site in the county's housing inventory to meet its RENA obligations. Today's action doesn't amend the general plan or approve development. It only determines whether sewer service can be provided. LAFCO's policy requires balancing multiple objectives, including the need to facilitate housing where infrastructure can efficiently serve it. We've confirmed that infrastructure can serve this site, and I encourage you to support the amendment of the sphere of influence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're at a point to take the next 5 names.
Can we have Craig Smith, Celeste Marassi, Neil Water, blank, Sue Tredederick, and Cheryl Adkins.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
All right, thank you. I'm Craig Smith. My wife and I have lived on Penny Lane for 31 years. I've spent my whole time in Napa there. I really respect and appreciate y'all's being here and everybody else's as well. Shows a lot of fortitude. Since we've lived on Penny Lane, there have been 3 affordable housing projects built in the area. There were apartments built on Shirtlift. There were some built on Shirtlift and Amola, and then across the street from that unit. I think those are actually assisted living places of some sort. To my knowledge, there was no ruckus about them at all when they were proposed. They were appropriate for those specific sites. They were the right size. They made sense. We welcomed them as neighbors. I've had the distinct advantage of seeing literally every day that I leave Penny Lane the activities that go on that everybody has been talking about. And you hear about all of them individually. You hear about the Rebobs and the different folks. I can tell you there's stuff going on there all the time. Nobody's mentioned yet the reenactment of the Civil War, which was interesting. I was surprised the first time I woke to cannon fire. Not pleased with it, but you know, that's just a place for it. Those activities also serve as a gateway to the park. I can't imagine that some of those scouts and the Rebobs haven't stumbled their way up to Lake Marie, whether on foot or on bike or whatever, and to visit the whole park. When Bottle Rock showed up, I just thought, well, it's over now. Armageddon's here. I won't sleep. It's just over. It was wonderful. I asked my wife if we can invite them all over to the house. She said no, but they continue to come. They're respectful, and they get a view of Napa that they otherwise wouldn't get. And it's the same with the residents. This is part of people's impression of what Napa is Skyline Park in that open space. Do we need affordable housing? Of course. Are there other appropriate sites? People have alluded to that. And it certainly makes sense in my mind to explore those. If this goes away, it's gone. And those groups, as they've said themselves, there aren't alternative places. It's not like they decided which of these 3 fabulous opportunities do we want to take advantage of. Skyline Park is it. And to lose that would be to lose it all the way around. I'm asking you to oppose this sphere of influence. And this does actually mark whether or not this project goes forward. It seems very clear. If there's no sewer there, this doesn't happen. I may be missing something, but so I would respectfully ask that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi, Celeste Marisu, North Napa. My concern is financial. One of the concerns, right? Obviously, Skyline is very valued by the community. And what I understand that this parcel is very important to the revenue that operates that park. So my request would be, if it's so important to put housing here, find a permanent and an ongoing replacement for the money that it creates to fund Skyline Park. My other comment would be that I second what Susan Crosby had said. I don't need to repeat it. In the respect of climate change and preventing it. I think that's where we have, as a county, 50% of our land is covered with impermeable surfaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. Next speaker.
Yes, I'm Sutri Denik. I'm a resident of Napa. Oh, can you hear me? I'm Sutri Denik and a resident of Napa, and I'm a horse rider, and I use the park all the time. But I'd like to rebut one thing. Yes, the park was on the affordable potential housing affordable housing. But there was a Housing Authority Advisory Commission report that came to the conclusion after a year of intense study that Skyline Park was not a suitable site for high-density affordable housing. So although it came off that it was on the site, I just wanted to make sure that people realize that there was a commission that studied this. They said there was a lot of deliberation and a lot of effort and it was over a year that they made this study, and they came to the conclusion that it was not a suitable site for high density affordable housing. And the other thing I just wanted to emphasize is that you could call this adjacent land to the park, but for years, like everyone's saying, for years that this parcel has been used for community events and for revenue and overflow parking for hiking events, running events. So it's a little misleading to say, yeah, it's adjacent to the park, but for over 30 years, it's been an integral part of the park and the life of the park. And I just want to say, too, that I don't know if many people know that the park was created by a group of horse riders, equestrians, and they spent 3 months, 3 years writing a proposal to create the park and going back and forth between the county and the state. And they also, in the beginning, when they ran out of funds to run the park, many members of the group donated thousands of dollars of their own money to keep the park operating. And they also provided labor. They put in water pipes, dug ditches, brought supplies up by horseback to the trail makers. So in closing, I'd just like to say providing affordable housing is important, but it should be able to be done without taking land use away from a self-supporting park created by citizens who made significant sacrifices to leave a legacy of a park to the community. For me personally, it's heartbreaking to have any type of housing on land that has been used by the park for years. To me, parks in general are places of beauty and quiet where you do not hear the noises of development and where individuals and families can connect with nature, which in this day and age we encourage to do much more of.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil Water. I'm a 36-year resident of Old Town Napa. Back in the day, I was even was a mountain biker on Skyline Park, and I wasn't very good. So I fully understand the need for housing, affordable and otherwise. But Napa County has one of the lowest percentages of parkland in Northern California. It always has. That was always sort of an embarrassment to me when I first moved here. Anyway, there are numerous empty buildings adjacent to Skyline Park and Napa State Hospital that can be demolished and used for housing. That's all.
Thank you very much, Neil. Next speaker.
Hello. My name is Cheryl Atkins. I'm a Napa native. I've lived here for 60 years. I've ridden my horses out at Skyline Park. It's a beautiful place to ride your horse. We have very few parcels like this where we can still ride. The property is also the home to many wild species, and we need to preserve their rights to remain there. It's also a place where people go to decompress. As you've heard many people speak about the events that goes on out there. Life is pretty stressful now, and we need these places to go. I am aware that we need affordable housing, but I'm not quite sure that that's the right location because of the thinness of the road. I've also been in construction for 15 years. So I know firsthand what a large development like this can do to a surrounding area, the noise, the dust, the the inconvenience to the people who live there. And as for somebody who rides horses out there, you would never be able to ride a horse out there again. The noise from the construction would be dangerous for both horse and rider, and it would end riding in Skyline Park. A project like this is unfavorable impact on humans and wildlife encounters in the park because of the stress on the animals that a construction development like this would cause. Additionally, removing animals from their natural range can stress them, potentially leading to abnormal behavior, increasing aggressiveness. If wildlife is excluded from one area, they will move on to other areas in the community, which we have rattlesnakes out there. We have bobcats and mountain lions. We don't really want those in the residential areas. From the meeting with the developers that I attended, when we questioned them about the animals in the park, this is exactly what they stated. The animals in the park are not their problem. That's the park's problem. But it is their problem because they coincide with what's going on out there. 185 units, I've done the math. There's only 158 parking spaces. If you have a 2-car in there, you need an extra 158 parking spaces. If you have 3 cars in a two-bedroom apartment, that would add up to 447 cars, not including their visitors. But that was also minusing the 158 people. That leaves still 289
And
parking
thank you.
spaces.
If you could wrap up your comments.
Okay. I also want to talk about the
that was
impact
3
on
minutes,
water.
So
Okay.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Pollution.
And we're definitely hearing all of you. We do have a lot of folks who want to speak, so I hope that was respectful. I just want everybody to have the equitable 3 minutes. Can we have the next 5 names, please?
This is the final group of speaker cards. Jake Roygut, Marissa Carlish, Jay Ballinson, and Ron Stadioto.
Hello, I'm Jake Rugit. I live in Napa. I'm here as a Napa citizen and a longtime user of Skyline Park, both as a volunteer and as a hiker. I'm here to voice my concern that the county may not understand the significance of this 5 acres of open flat ground at Skyline Park. As a botanist, I have studied Napa County flora in detail for over 50 years, and I've watched the county approve project after project, progressing towards development of every inch of Napa Valley. It is a constant battle to protect land on the floor of the valley because the wheels of government can't find the means to say no to any project involving flat grassland. The county needs to take a good look here and answer the question as to what is best for our citizens. The county is planning this development under pressure of a government agency that mandates housing. Where is the voice of Napa citizens in this matter? This plot of 5 acres is used for public events, for festivals, recreation, and sometimes as a stopover for migratory birds. This land has never been cultivated and is a remnant of the valley that has survived the pressures of development for decades. It is now a unique piece of land that has been in use as part of Skyline Park since 1983. It is irreplaceable. If this land is to be committed to housing, I request that you first mitigate the loss by finding a comparable replacement and putting it into permanent protection for the people of Napa. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Next speaker.
Hi there, Marissa Carlisle. We have heard so many implores and just love of land. We've heard technicalities of why we should be required to have something like this because we have a social responsibility for public housing. My main concern today is this is a stepping stone. If you approve the sanitation, it's just on its way. It's the developer, oh, well, we already did that. It's just a stepping stone. We need more reflection and more inspection about all of the considerations. I don't think it's a time to pass something now that is nibbling away at the structure of protection for the land we love so much. If our nation hadn't done, Sandra mentioned, if we hadn't established national parks, what will we have for the public to refresh their souls in these times, but in all times? We just need more time to consider, but definitely not breaking down the first step, the first wall, get the sanitation in there, all the money that's been spent so far. And if that road is used for that many cars, it's going to be a quagmire of chaos. I know that road at nighttime when you can barely drive through Imola. The developers at the meeting I attended said, oh, we plan on expanding it. I've counted the telephone poles, the trees, everything that have to be cut down to expand that road. I just implore you to consider that it is not the right location. I am so in favor of my social responsibilities, but it's just not the right place.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Balinson. I've been in Napa since 1976, when I started teaching. I've been involved with Skyline Park since 1987. You see, you love the t-shirt. And I'm also on the board of directors. I'm not speaking as a member of the board of directors. I'm speaking as an individual who's used the park since 1987. And what I've heard, I love the things that people have said. One thing is been mentioned a little bit, but one thing that hasn't been said is we're guests there. The park doesn't belong to us. The park belongs to the animals who live there. Fortunately, the mountain lion hasn't been on the back road behind the barn in a while. The deer and the coyotes come down, and the wild pigs haven't been down on the trails down below yet, but that could happen. And I brought up to the developers, I said, well, if you put in your project, are you going to put fencing around? Because, you know, the creatures that live there would love to dine on the residents' cats and dogs because they're wild animals. So that's something, and also an important thing. You're talking about this effort about sewage and water. The animals who live there don't worry about the sewage and water. You don't need to provide for them. They will provide for themselves. That's what they've been doing for years and years before we became a park. And so, yes, my heart is there. I worked 87 or 87 after the fire for 3 months, processing trees, learned a lot about the park. I used to run, I used to bike in there. Now, because of my body, I should have worn my t-shirt, no bad trails, just bad knees. I just drive up with the vehicle and we do some work that way. I don't walk more than a mile or two. But the issue is consider the environment that is there, that exists. As was said by a former speaker, where do those animals go? Also, there are trails being developed behind Lake Marie by the Open Space District, which is going to bring in more usage and hopefully not impact any of the animals around there. And so far, we've been very lucky. But if you build a development, goodbye to the animals. And, you know, the people who get to enjoy them won't be able to go enjoy them anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Next speaker.
Ron Stradiato. I've lived here 45 years, 1212 3rd Avenue, which is right on the way. I commuted to Vallejo for 15 years on a bicycle with some other surgeons from Kaiser and with the Mare Island engineers. So I went on 3rd, 4th, down Imola, through the state hospital to Vallejo, and then when 29 became a highway, we had to stop that. So this is a bit of a land ethos thing for me. We've heard from the lawyers. I didn't do my homework. I was orthopedic surgeon. I can quote all kind of pages, but this is 5.26 acres versus 860 some. But look where it is. Look at a map. It's the transition from this field into the wilderness. And all of a sudden you want to put, we need the housing, but this is not the place for it. That road, as somebody else mentioned, cannot handle the traffic. I mean, bicycling became more and more hazardous through the 80s and 89. But Imola was already busy then. And, you know, there's a washateria there, there's a convenience store. And I don't know how you're going to handle the thing. The main thing is, I think, I like the title of the thing. It's called the California Excess Site Program. Is this an excess site? No, it's a vital site it's a transition site into this wilderness. And developers will say, well, we've spent this much money on surveys, and we've spent this much money, and they're trying to leverage the lever so to their favor. But we just have to have common sense and want to preserve this for the jewel it is, and that's enough.
Thank you very much, Ron. So I think we don't have any more speaker cards, but if there are others who wish to speak, please come on up.
Hi, my name is Dalton Gu. I want to say thank you for your role and your responsibility to LAFCO and to Napa and Napa County. Appreciate what you do. And I just had two thoughts I wanted to share. One is that Skyline, and specifically this spot in Skyline, like, yes, it's 5 acres, but it is unique to Skyline. This specific area is meaningful to me and my family. My wife and daughter ride horses, and they use this space. The line does go through the round pen on the map, and so technically maybe there's space still to be used, but she uses this space every day. She's working with a wild Mustang who is already jumpy, so construction will definitely impact her ability to safely enjoy that. And a few people have mentioned the connection to mental health with this space, and she struggles with PTSD or is diagnosed with PTSD, and they say horses are cheaper than therapy, which I don't know if that's completely true, but second thought is I'm always thinking about intention and motive. Everyone in this room have a motive, right? And the citizens of Napa, I wouldn't say they're making any money from this space. They love this space. There's passion there. And not that I know the intentions of the developers, but being in real estate and a small business owner, I can feel like I safely can assume that the intention towards building these homes aren't to meet a need in Napa. They're to make financial gain. And so just a couple thoughts to share, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I think we have a couple more speakers.
Good afternoon and greeting, commissioners. My name is Greg Clark, 3565 Young Avenue, Napa. It's a pleasure to be here. As former county agricultural commissioner, scoutmaster, equestrian enthusiast, outdoor person, chair of the county behavioral health board, and skeptic of development opportunities offered to the community, I question not only the appropriateness, but also the intent of this proposal. You've heard a lot of good things here today. As you said, I'm not going to repeat them, but know that I support a lot that was said. Much of the groundwork done for this proposal was done by a previous board of supervisors, county administration, state elected representatives, and development interests. It is my opinion, just my opinion, that the interests of the entire community were not first and foremost in the minds of these decision makers. I also believe actions similar to those before you today are an almost hidden pretext for future development. I also tire of Napa Sanitation District system improvements at the edges of our city, which also seem done to further land annexation and development in areas that have long been protected. And nothing has been said of the site's location being adjacent to a wildlands and housing fire interface. Don't get me wrong, I understand the need for housing in our community and county. I have had a family of 4 living with me for the last year and a half, and while I would love to have them living in their own place, I would rather see your attention devoted to working with other jurisdictions in job creation and housing within the current established boundaries and spheres of influence. I believe you as a commission should not approve the inclusion of the subject property in the sphere of influence. I would also like to see Napa Sanitation be more forthcoming and transparent in how their actions made our city a cockroach haven. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Other speakers?
My name is Tracy Moody. I'm one of the Penny Lane residents. So I've lived on Penny Lane for the majority of my life, for 40, 50 years at this point. And I think I agree with everything everybody's been saying about Skyline Park. It is an amazing park. It is, so I won't repeat a lot of that. what I've seen missed out of this equation is that 185 unit parcel that they're units that they're proposing doing, they don't have adequate parking. You look at any of the other developments on down the Imola, and typically what happens is it's pushed out into the streets because they don't provide enough parking either. So, and they're much smaller units. So at that range, if you were to put that many units out there and only provide a single parking space per unit, you're undoubtedly going to have cars lining all the way up and down Imola, not just in front of that space, but all the way to the entrance of Skyline, which will create an environmental impact to the whole park. We talk about the horses and all the wildlife that is sensitive to construction. It will also be sensitive to all the impacts of residents living there. You dump 185 units on there and all 300 plus residents, the cars, the activity, the noise, that's not going away. Construction noise would go away. That won't go away. All the impact to the surrounding streets like My Street, Penny Lane, Imola, Patton Avenue, all those areas are going to be flooded with cars to where it's going to become an unlivable situation for us. Our streets are narrow. There's no room to park on them. All those impacts are going to filter out into the city. The traffic congestion that's going to be caused up and down that avenue is just going to be unbearable. So while I agree with absolutely everything that's been said about the park itself, it's 100% true. Nobody's considering what's going to filter into the city itself. And that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is John Hockley. I'm Penny Lane also. Actually hiked a few miles up at Skyline this morning myself. I've seen all these people here, and I appreciate you guys taking the time for all this. One thing that kind of hasn't been mentioned much is LAFCO and sphere of influence. Those are scary words for me. I'm on Penny Lane, like I said. I'm on well water, city sewer. For 25 years, I've tried to get city water. I am out of the sphere of influence. I've called LAFCO numerous times. My wife said I didn't do a good enough job. She called them. 2 years later, when she calls them, we get the same phone recording answer that I got 2 years ago. So please question LAFCO sphere of influence, please.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we have everyone in the room who has had an opportunity to speak. Do we have comments by phone? No, we do not. Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming, for sitting with us and giving the comments that you have given, and being such a good and respectful audience. It's really, really, I don't know, it makes me feel good. You know, we've all sat in many, many meetings, and so thank you for that, and for sharing what you have shared. So at this point, I think we will, unless there's anyone else to speak, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Cottrell, second by Ramos, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? But that motion carries. That's simply to close the public hearing to allow us the ability to deliberate on everything that we've heard and everything that we've read. Before we start that, I neglected at the beginning to just ask for commissioner disclosures specific to this item. And this is different than the original. This is if you have learned anything outside of this hearing, you know, this is an opportunity to share that information. It's something we typically do at a public hearing. I'll start with Commissioner Doring.
I have nothing to disclose. I was wondering if that motion passed. I just want to be recognized that I did not support the motion to close the hearing.
Oh, you didn't?
Well, there may be other information that comes forward from our staff and other sources. What do you think, Council?
Yeah, it depends on whether or not there's new info to be introduced from staff. So I suppose we could ask, is there any new information that has not been presented yet or included in the agenda?
No, there's not. All right, then I will support the motion. Thank you.
Okay.
Want to make that clarification.
Thank you.
It went fast.
It did go fast. Sorry about that, moving things along. So Commissioner Cottrell, I think, said, did you respond to disclosures on this item?
What I was going to share is that I believe I am on receipt of emails that have been sent to the entire commission about this item and that have been made part of the public record.
Great, great. And I have also received at least one email that I submitted as a part of the public record and have met with the executive officer in advance. Nothing that is learned outside of the meeting, but just wanted to report that. Commissioner Khan.
I want to say that I was at the original meeting that the applicant or the developer had, and I have some comments related to that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ramos.
Thank you. I have had conversations with PEP Housing and the co-applicant. What's the name? The
Collective Operations.
Collective Operations, but under a new name. I've had conversations also with, in her capacity then, but now the Director of Housing and Homeless Services for the state of California. I've also had conversations with the Assistant Director of the Department of Housing and Homeless Services. I have had conversations with Napa Sanitation, and I believe that's my exhaustive list.
Good. I appreciate that. So at this point, the commission will deliberate. I just want to sort of set the stage a little bit for those of you here, and we heard a lot of information. I think you're all aware that the decision that's in front of us is sort of narrowly focused to looking at the sphere of influence for the Napa Sanitation District. And while we've heard a lot of comments about traffic and parking and various other things that I think are really important issues as well. If you don't hear us deliberating on those items, it's because that's sort of outside the narrow band of what we're looking at. But it's all really good and important information. So with that, is there somebody that would like to open either with questions or comments? Are you willing to start? Would you like to start?
Sure. Okay. First, I want to say thank you to all who have been here, and to those, Audrey, I remember you from the last time and our extensive discussions that we have had, and I very much appreciate the engagement. I think one of the things that I want to stress that is it's a difficult place where we find ourselves. One here, I am here as a LAFCO commissioner, but I moonlight as a county supervisor. And when you look at the county housing element and how we got to this place, and I think that timeline is incredibly important, and that timeline wasn't fully reflected in our packet. And so the first one is that the governor's executive order N0619 from the Department of General Services that was passed in January 15th of 2019. And that is incredibly important because that precedes the Napa County's housing element approval by 4 years in its entirety. And so what ends up happening, and why, and Audrey, we had this very long, lengthy conversation. I remember it quite vividly. The county of Napa, if it did not include the Skyline Imola site location in its housing element, would not get any credit, even if the housing was built. We are sitting at a place right now, and I think it definitely bears sharing with my colleagues the exact language that appears in our housing element. And what it says is that let me go to appearance number 5 of Skyline. And that is that the state identified the 20.34 acre surplus parcel included the 5.2 acre portion in the executive order, and none of that requires any county approval for building. None of it. They do not need to change zoning. Everyone else, if you have property, you have to change zoning. So while yes, you are correct, anywhere else, a Measure P vote would be warranted. And in fact, our designation right now is Ag Watershed and then Skyline Park Master Plan. So Skyline has its own designation within our land use element. None of that matters. They do not need any county approval. In fact, what is included in our housing element and says that the site adjacent to the County Office of Education, while water and wastewater infrastructure is located nearby, but definitely not on all parts of Penny Lane, obtaining water from the city of Napa and wastewater services from the Napa Sanitation District would require approvals from the city, LAFCO, and the district. That is it. There's no county involvement in this. And so interestingly, and I think what also bears mention is when the county included this site, the Imola site, identified on page 328 of our housing element, we were not informed by the Department of General Services as to the number, the intensity of those units that were to be built. And so what we did is we utilized the maximum allowable per the government code. What is identified in our housing element is 100 units. So the proposal of this site as it stands right now exceeds the county's allocated amount in the housing element by 84%. Yes, it is identified in as being part of what is utilized to satisfy the county's regional housing needs assessment. But what is also included in the language is that the county has included Housing Element Program H4M, which outlines the county's commitments to facilitate and monitor the state's process for developing affordable housing at the Imola site, and commits the county to identify an alternative site as necessary to fully accommodate the county's sixth cycle RHNA if it becomes clear that the Imola Avenue site will not be able to support housing development that be completed by the end of the planning period in 2031. So the very fact that it is that this site is identified in the housing element itself is not county support for this site. It is simply taking credit and also committing ourselves that if in fact this development is not feasible, that we work to identify alternative housing elements. What I'll say is, I forget which speaker, I did not write it down, said, when you look at housing and where we're looking at the orderly growth and placement of housing located to services a function that LAFCO definitely does have. We are we as in the county, my county hat on, we're in an incredibly difficult position. When you look at our January 2023 housing element, the sites that we identified in the unincorporated housing were Spanish Flat out by Berryessa, Foster Road, Horsemen's Association area. And a few people spoke about horses. You don't like that one either. And Skyline, this Imola site. And so this was, if we had not included the Skyline site with the credit of 100, then that would be finding another 100 units somewhere else, of which truly was not feasible. What places us in a position right now at the county where we can breathe a little is that of the 1,014 units that were allocated to us in the last housing cycle, we have been able to shift off 90% of those, and 90%, 80% to the city of Napa, and an additional amounts here and there to the Up Valley, but also down in American Canyon. That in fact does allow us and takes some pressure off of LAFCO of not having to look at unincorporated lands and that urban sprawl. I think one of the things, and what I'll say in terms of comments for me is, I will say, I'm the county supervisor in this area. I'm very familiar. Audrey, I told you I camped there with my kids. I too have taken my bad knees to the trails of Skyline and to look at the connectivity that we are going to have. I'm one of the commissioners on MTC that just voted for the Saskell Ridge project to be able to acquire that additional land on the backside. The continuity of the open space is incredibly important, and also as the person that had to communicate with all of you during 2017's fires, I absolutely know every single part of this park that the fires ravaged through, and how incredibly close it came to so many of your homes for those that are there. When I look at the parcel data, I will say what concerns me about this area is that we do have development going up until the County Office of Education. And we do have, in fact, a prior experience with the Department of General Services creating an apartment complex for supportive housing over by the Trabajo Avenue entrance into Napa State Hospital. And in between there are both parcels that are flat and not developed, and there are also buildings that I know are incredibly dilapidated. I do not believe that the inclusion of this parcel in Napa Sanitation's district would be consistent with having orderly lines, which I think is important. I do not think it is consistent, not even with our housing element that was identified as a max 100 units. And that's for my colleagues on page 324 of, 328 of our housing element. And I do not believe that the mere inclusion of this site being the only identified site in Napa County in the governor's order of 06-19 by itself lends it to be appropriate. I will not be voting in favor of inclusion of this, and in the district, and in fact would then, when appropriate for a motion, would ask that LAFCO punt this over to the county to invoke the section within the county's own housing element that commits it to work with the Department of General Services for an alternative location site.
Thank you very much for your summary. And it really set the stage. Commissioner Khan, did you want to provide comment?
Well, I don't have all the detail that she has, but I'm very impressed with all the information. So a couple of things. I was at the meeting that the developers put together. We all had to have 3x5 cards and submit our questions. And one of the questions I submitted is, are the low-income residents in Napa going to be able to take advantage of this? And she said, not necessarily. Okay, she was very clear with that. She said, they can apply, but it could be people from Vallejo or Sassoon, which means here we have a shortage And we have no guarantee that a handful of people who we know need this housing is going to be applied. So that's one of the reasons I'm not supporting this. I would definitely vote against it. The other thing that in the past, I think we did this even at the last meeting, we had opportunities to connect services from other parcels. And we opted not to accept those because there wasn't a finished product. There was this anticipation of what it might be. And I don't think we, as LAFCO, should be accepting water or sewer or whatever until there's actually a finished product. They have 185. Our general plan has 100. So there's a big difference here. So I think we're way ahead of the cycle on that. The other thing I thought was interesting is that, I'm not sure who was, said that the commission had studied this and determined the site was not appropriate. So I think you've clarified some of the items about it might have been put in this document, it might have been needed in order to, I know there was a lot of horse trading, excuse me for use that word, there's a lot of horse trading going on at Skyline in order to get Skyline Park and to buy Skyline Park. And so we kind of had that training. But I think primarily, I don't know that this is going to benefit the low-income people in Napa. There's no guarantee of that. I think it's premature to approve this until we have a fixed product. And so I would be voting to not accept this.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll look down on this end. Commissioner Cottrell?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to my colleagues who've already spoken on this matter, and for everyone who has come to spend time this afternoon in this room to discuss a beautiful parcel that we have. I have spent a lot of time in Skyline myself. I've hiked there, I've biked there, I've done a few laps in JP's Backyard Ultra, and really appreciate seeing all the mountain bike teams out there as well. And a point that was mentioned here that hasn't come up a lot, but I think is worth repeating is we're not just talking about the impact on this 5.2 acres, we're talking about impact on the entire park. So I think that's worth noting. I do also want to make the point, I think people have mentioned, we've heard, I appreciate both the developers, PEP and collective operations being here. And I want to reaffirm that their work is challenging and hard, and finding sites where we can do affordable housing is really challenging. So I appreciate the number of people here today who said, I'm all for affordable housing, just not here. My ask of the community is that when we look for other sites that we have, we continue to engage and support where we can. And then I appreciate my colleague, Commissioner Ramos, laying out some history and framing that we are sitting here today as commissioners on LAFCO. We are not wearing our county supervisor hat. And so as LAFCO commissioners, our job is to apply to the facts LAFCO's policies, which are outlined, some of them are outlined in the staff report. And the ones that really resonate for me, I'll just run through them somewhat quickly. Supervisor Ramos mentioned Section 3, orderly expansion of development. This one doesn't quite fit that in my view. Section 5A10 tells us to look at current uses versus planned uses, right? We're looking at very different sets of uses. And then let's see, let me find my next one here. I think the most important one to me is even if the state's action ends up preempting local land use, we still have a real core of Napa County's land use planning are our Measure J and Measure P. And those two voter-passed measures say you cannot change an agricultural use to a non-agricultural use without a vote of the people. And this action here today would change that, or the ultimate action would change that. So what we're being asked about today is simply the SOI, but in looking at that question, we are supposed to look at the policies about those Measure J and Measure P actions. So that one to me is the kicker here, and so I will not be supporting a move toward inclusion in the SOI.
Thank you. Commissioner Doring, did you want to make comments?
Well said. I'm a no, to be honest with you. But I do think there's an interesting interplay as a lawyer thinking about these issues all the time, and particularly let me start, first of all, let me step back. Thank you to the public for being so gracious, for complying with this thing, and all these. It's wonderful. I mean, people could have done all kinds of things here today, and you've shown your best self in Napa, in my view. And I'm very proud to be a part of Napa County. So thank you so much for that. Well spoken, really a number of points. And for somebody way up in Up Valley, I learned a lot about a lot of things today. A lot of nuances that I love about small Napa County. Love that. I'm focusing really on the legal issues mostly, and I'm really interested, and you've all touched upon this, but this interplay between the state and its authority and the executive order and all of that, and our own local measure J and P, and that is very interesting. That's the first thing I focused on when I read the staff report. How does that happen? And I was thinking about the sort of the timing of everything, and it just seems very backwards to me. You want to get as much of the clarification as possible on what is the actual designation. You start there, and that seems so unclear in my mind. And thank you for the edification on some of the background. Some of it is still a little bizarre to me how it came down, but too weird for me, honestly. And I still think that we have to respect our own Measure P and Measure J, and those have not happened yet. So until you get there, and that may happen, who knows? People have a right to put that on a ballot. It'll be interesting to see how that happens. But for those reasons, just the confusion of this property and all that's going on here, and frankly, just laying out the consistency with policies, as everyone's already said, they're not at this point. So I'm a no.
Thank you. Well, it's kind of anticlimactic now, but I'll start by saying I'm also a no. I would, and I think this is clearly, to use another horse expression, cart before the horse. We're being asked to look at something that hasn't vetted out a lot of very significant questions, which I won't repeat because we've already gone through that. But those are really important questions. The county's zoning and general plan does matter. It absolutely does matter. I understand that it's owned by the state. I understand there's a process, but that all needs to be clarified. The notion that the county's housing element only lists 100 units, that was something I just learned today. And to me, that's another very significant issue. So it shows me there's a lot more work to do before we get to this point. I think it's the staff report, I think, outlined all of those things that we want to try to see take place in terms of Measure P, in terms of the county zoning. So there's a lot of homework to do. And I think what's important is that we deliver that message back to the applicants, that's where you need to start in this process. Whether you get there or not, we don't know. That's not our charge. We're being asked today, like I said, to look at this very narrow question of whether or not this property should be put into the sphere of influence of the sanitation district. I have no question that, from a technical standpoint, maybe the sanitation district could provide service, but that's not where this process should start. I'm wearing my LAFCO hat now, and I think we're all trying to be very careful of that. But I will tell you, this discussion has not taken place at the city of Napa to look at water service. That's an enormous issue. So I don't know how you flush toilets without water, but there's a lot of questions that need to take place. I really am grateful for everybody who showed up today to share your stories. Like everybody else, I've been here for 32 years. You know, my kids, myself, we're up at Skyline a lot. My family members are there. So it is a jewel. But I wanted to just be clear that our narrow vote today has to do with whether or not we should consider this request to put this property into the sphere of influence. So given that, I would look for a motion from the commission.
I will go ahead and make a motion to deny, including this parcel APN 0464500076 in the sphere of influence for Napa Sanitation District, and to also send notification to the county of Napa that we have, I mean, I know, but I don't want to, I don't want to overstep, to notification of the county of Napa that we have done so.
Just one clarification to the motion maker. There are two different versions of the resolution in there, so I assume the motion is for the resolution.
The resolution denying inclusion. Yes, thank you.
I second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Ramos, second by Commissioner Khan. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Again, thank you everyone for being here and conducting a good hearing.
So I want to let you know, this is what we do in the synagogue. So it works well because we all get your.
We're going to take a 10-minute comfort break, and we will be back if anybody's here for other items on the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. We are now on item 8, which is a discussion item of the draft municipal service review for the city of St. Helena. Can staff give us an update, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Before you is the draft municipal service review, or MSR, for the city of St. Helena. The report was initially prepared by a consultant, RSG, under contract. With that contract now concluded, staff has brought the project in-house and will manage it for public review, resolving any factual or editorial issues, coordinating closely with the city, and returning with a final report and recommendations at a future meeting. The purpose of this item is simply to receive the draft, introduce its principal findings, and formally begin the public review process. Now, quickly, St. Helena is a small, largely built-out city of approximately 5,160 residents and serves as an important commercial, employment, and visitor center for the Upper Napa Valley. Its population has declined since the last time this commission completed an MSR for St. Helena in 2008. Although regional forecasts anticipate that there will be renewed growth over the next 2 decades. The city's sphere is generally coterminous with its jurisdictional boundary. There are no disadvantaged unincorporated communities identified within or adjacent to the sphere. The draft makes no sphere recommendations at this time. However, the city has expressed interest in future discussions involving several adjacent developed areas that already receive some municipal services from the city. But any application to change the sphere to include specific areas would require separate analysis and commission action. The broad service conclusion is reassuring. Police, fire, planning and building, animal control, parks and recreation, streets, and wastewater treatment are all presently adequate for current demand. That does not mean there are no challenges. Public safety costs are rising. The city must determine a long-term location for City Hall and the police department. Fire service has become more expensive following the successful transition from a volunteer model to career staffing. And recruitment remains difficult in a high-cost region. There are also visible signs of progress. Police staffing is at its highest level in the 10-year review period within this report. Career fire staffing has stabilized emergency coverage and is supported by automatic aid. The pavement condition index improved from 47, which is a poor rating, in 2023, up to 65 a fair rating in 2024 after targeted rehabilitation. Parks provided about 5 acres per 1,000 residents, although aging facilities and deferred maintenance still require investment. Now, the most significant concern in the report is potable water. The system has adequate capacity to meet current and projected demand, and its supply is diversified among Bell Canyon Reservoir, groundwater, and purchased City of Napa water. However, capacity is not the same as resilience or affordability. St. Helena operates a relatively small utility with about 2,600 connections, including roughly 331 outside connections, which are legacy connections outside the city's boundary. Fixed infrastructure costs are therefore spread across a limited ratepayer base. Recent drought and also failures affecting the Rutherford intertie, as well as aging pipelines and equipment, all exposed vulnerabilities. Also, some brown water incidents have occurred. The 2023 rate study produced a 28% increase, yet water fund expenditures have recently exceeded revenues. The report identifies approximately $67 million in planned water improvements and cites a $19.8 million unfunded amount in the current capital program and a more recent estimate of as much as $57.5 million in water capital investment. Those figures need to be reconciled in the final report, but the policy conclusion is clear that continued rate planning, prioritization, grants or borrowing, and serious exploration of regional service models are warranted. Regionalization is not a predetermined outcome, but it is an option that should be evaluated for reliability, economies of scale, governance, and ratepayer impact. Wastewater presents a more positive story. In December 2024, the city completed an approximately $18.8 million tertiary membrane bioreactor treatment facility. That project corrected the treatment and compliance limitations identified in the prior MSR and provides adequate capacity for current development and anticipated build-out. Wastewater revenues have exceeded expenditures over the 5-year review period following the 2023 rate adjustment. The remaining wastewater risks are in the older collection system, including clay pipe, pump stations, continued capital reinvestment, and difficulty recruiting certified operators. Those are meaningful management issues, but the treatment system itself is no longer the limiting condition it once was. Financially, the city is stable in the near term, but faces a structural challenge over the longer term. General fund revenue grew from about $14.4 million in fiscal year 1920 to $19.8 million in fiscal year 23-24, and generally kept pace with expenditures. The city maintains reserves far above its 30% minimum policy, providing time to address projected operating deficits through approximately 2028. Those reserves are a cushion, but not a permanent solution. Rising compensation, insurance, fire service, infrastructure, and pension costs will require corrective action eventually. The miscellaneous pension plan was about 71% funded in fiscal year 2023, with an unfunded liability of roughly $10 million, while the police plan was nearly fully funded and the fire plan remained small and well-funded during the review period. To answer the practical question, no, the ship is not sinking, despite what some narratives may suggest. St. Helena is delivering adequate services, has invested in important improvements, and has financial capacity to manage near-term pressures. But the city is navigating a narrow channel. Its water system and longer-term structural budget require sustained attention, transparent capital planning, and decisions that cannot be deferred indefinitely. Quick note that the city has already provided some comments on this draft report, which are included as attachment 3 to the staff report. These comments will be included in the record and addressed by staff prior to completion of a final report to be presented at a future LAFCO meeting. And staff knows this will require some close work with city staff to ensure the city's comments and suggestions are adequately being addressed. So with all of this in mind, the staff recommendation is for the commission to receive this draft report, invite comments, and direct staff to complete the public review and return with a revised report for final action at a later meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Brendan. I think before we go to commissioner questions, I will open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to share comments? Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much. I'm Jim McCann. I'm the interim city manager in St. Helena. I wish Mr. Hinton had stuck around to hear the comments about the health of St. Helena. We're not a mess. And I'll also note that the city is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. And consequently, there are some things in town which are old and need repair and need replacement. And that includes our water and wastewater infrastructure. It only makes sense that after 150 years, some things might be tired and they have to be replaced. They break. They don't perform as they were intended, and so we have some of that. I'll also note that our PCI, our Pavement Condition Index, has actually improved since this report was drafted, and it's going to be in the low 70s very soon. So there's a lot going on good in St. Helena. I want to just thank you all for the work you do. This is tough stuff. I sat out here and listened to it all, and it's kind of nice to be out in the public section as opposed to back there. So I really appreciate all the work you do. I want to thank the board and Mr. Freeman in particular for all the effort that's reflected in the report. I've read through it. I've met with Brendan to talk a little bit about that. And we have been able to provide some information back to you guys. I recognize very much the importance of the MSR and of the review of the sphere of influence. Having worked with different cities over the years, I know this is a basic foundational document, and it builds on, we build on it for future discussions. It's also important for us locally just to see from an objective view how our services are perceived. So it's helpful, and we appreciate it. It's been a long time since St. Helena has had an MSR or a review of our sphere of influence, as you heard from Mr. Freeman, so we welcome this. Let me acknowledge that there's been considerable turnover of staff over the years in St. Helena. And I know that makes things more difficult for an outside agency to come in and to get a clear picture. And I think that turnover certainly has contributed to some or maybe missed communication. And so I think some of that is reflected in the report, and the letters that I've written identify some areas where we have some question or concern, or would like to offer some further discussion and speak with Mr. Freeman, and perhaps have some revision made to different sections of the report. Beyond that, there is an area we would welcome the board's direction, and that's around the change to the sphere of influence. We haven't had that review in a number of years. The report, as I understand it, does not recommend any change or any consideration or any exploration. I know that the city's efforts around the MSR and the sphere evaluation some years ago stalled. I don't know all the ins and outs of why. I just know that it didn't proceed. I know that we have a general plan that we rely on in St. Helena that has 3 study areas that coincide with areas of interest to us, of course, that we anticipate in future perhaps being a part of St. Helena. The area around Meadowwood and Madrone Knolls, the area which is immediately adjacent to our wastewater treatment plant and its spray fields, and then the area as one enters St. Helena, the southern part of town, where the Mackey is and Press and a number of other businesses. Those are all just logical areas in my mind to be included within the city. We provide services to them, water, certainly first responder services, a variety of other things. They just make sense to us. And so the report doesn't recognize or doesn't recommend that they be studied or included. I would hope that you would provide direction to at least have that done. As I read through the document and as I looked through it again, as I had a little time here, I see that your own report identifies the need for that consideration of the amendment to the sphere of influence as again, a foundational step. And so in order to get to step 2, we got to do step 1. We'd very much like to get to step 2 or 3 or 4. So I would hope you'd allow us to start on that journey. It doesn't guarantee anything. I certainly understand that. But it seems to me to be very, very logical that those properties should be considered for inclusion in the city in as much as they pretty much are. The other one is a property to the north of town, commonly referred to as the Falcon Crest property. That does have some reference in the report. The city was approached by property owners who had asked to commence that process just to see what the likelihood would be. City Council thought it fair to give that opportunity, and so that's also an area that we'll be discussing. So with that, I'm happy to answer your questions if you'd like. But again, thank you very much for this work, Brendan, and we look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Assuming there's no other public comment. It's not a public hearing, so we're not going to close the public hearing. So we'll go to the commissioners with any questions or comments.
In reading this report, I came across, I guess, southern area of St. Helena, and I have friends who live off of Zinfandel, and I think she said there was about 70 homes there, and they're all on septic, and they're failing miserably. She was lucky because when she bought the house, she put a whole new system in. But one of your ideas is to kind of bring those into the city. The question is, how would that benefit them? I mean, because I doubt that someone's going to want to come in and put a whole bunch of sewers, but there might be some technical expertise or, here's some ways to make this work. Because she said a lot of the neighbors are, don't feel like they can sell their house because that's one of the big problems. And so it's just, I happened to read this and had a discussion with her. So, I guess the question is, what are the benefits to the people at the south end or the north end, and how that, is it bringing more revenue into the city so that you can support all that? So I would like to get a little, yes, please come up.
Chair?
Yeah.
I think that was public. I'm not sure we're not here to have a discussion. We're here to have comments at the commission level at this point.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And we also don't have a map in front of us with those specific properties. I know south of St. Helena, along Highway 29 is one issue. We're really here to focus on the language in the MSR. There's a lot. This is, first of all, what I will say is, an MSR is a point in time, right? So you spend a lot of time reviewing it and putting it together, but life changes and moves. So I think we all acknowledge that, we're trying to capture a good point in time so that there's a good launch point for all of this future work. What I would also add is to just make sure we all look at page 14 on the MSR, which does at least mention the discussion about the 3 areas that Mr. McCann mentioned, the Meadowwood Resort property, the Madrone Knoll residential neighborhood, and the commercial corridor located along 29 south of the city limits. I think those are conversations that, you know, we want to try to encourage to have. We had a very significant discussion about not joining at the hip in terms of completing this MSR and then looking at the SOI. I'm hoping the language on page 14 at least gives us that, again, sort of point in time and launch point to say we recognize that those are discussions that need to take place. For me, I think that's reasonable at this point in terms of leaving that information, you know, so that we can get to that step 2 and step 3, which is a part of the process. If that language needs to be changed, you know, I think if our executive officer and Mr. McCann can work together on the comments in the letters that were submitted, which I thought were very reasonable letters with comments that are the items that can be fixed. I will just tell you, my hope is that that happens at the staff level. And when you say this returns at a future meeting, I'm hoping that you can bring this back to us for final consideration at the October meeting. So with that, you know, those are my comments. I know this is for discussion only, but do other commissioners have comments? Commissioner Doring.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the MSR report and the oral report today. Just want to follow up a little bit and bring some context to the study areas. So I've been on the council for a while, and I kind of know how we've got from there to here. 2017 is when the MSR was introduced as a potential for our community. At that time, the city was undergoing its own general plan process, which was a lengthy process. Probably at that point, it was into year 10, maybe 13. It's going on and on and on. The subject of different areas of our city, outside of our city limits, has been introduced periodically over many decades, but it became more formal in 2017, and I was involved in LAFCO at that time. And here's how it came down. We wanted to have certain areas talked about at the LAFCO level, and we did not have our ducks in a row at that point. We did not have any documents, planning documents, general plan documents to start with, to have a baseline so that we could have the discussion at LAFCO. And that was a reasonable observation by LAFCO at that time. So we were instructed to go back to our general plan at that time and fold in these areas as study areas. That was actually the direction and advice of the LAFCO staff at that point. We didn't know any better. We go, okay, that's reasonable. And the idea was we have to have something to talk about. It has to be in your general plan. And so that's where we were. We finished our general plan in 2019. We did include the study sessions. Now there's some overlap, and I'm not exactly sure why there's different descriptions of some of the study areas. As I know it, Meadowood Madrone, maybe that was taken out as one, and I don't know what was exactly included in that area. The wastewater treatment plant area around there, I'm talking in general terms, and then the southern part, the commercial part of St. Helena. What was the third one? You mentioned another one today. Yeah, Falcon Crest. Anyway, 3 of those were included in the general plan. They are in our general plan, the study areas. So our general plan was completed in 2019. It just dropped off the cliff, and there was no follow-up on that. And I think Mr. McCann has explained probably some of that is on the city of St. Helena, but there was no follow-up. But we did the work that we were instructed to do. General plan was adopted in May of 2019, and so here we are. I just want to make sure that the narrative is not that this is something new. This is something that actually was brought to us by LAFCO. We complied. It took us a while to get it done, but we did follow up on that. So that's sort of the background on those areas. And I guess that given that background, that's why at a couple of meetings ago, I was actually surprised by the discussion, because I assumed all along, here are these areas, they've been put into the general plan. Why is it not at least mentioned in some way, maybe not formally, but as areas to follow up on, consistent with prior direction? Whether it's here at the MSR or at the SOI or together, hopefully we can have that background. So apparently the next step would be SOI, and I know that that's on the work plan, potentially, at least listed. We have to make that decision. I guess you'll have to get authority from us to do that. I saw that on one of the pieces of paper. So anyway, that's the background. Long story short, we're willing to work. Obviously, we understand the political climate. We understand what's going on. We understand, but we are, for me, as you may know, I'm a very process-oriented person. I'm not guessing the result. I at least want to go through the good faith process and let the chips fall where they may. And so that's kind of what we're asking for. I think that's what Mr. McCann is alluding to also. So I'll stop there.
Good. Well, I would say take another look at the language on page 14 and see if that needs to be amended or enhanced in some way to ensure that the language is correct.
Okay.
Seems like a good place to me to put it,
All
to
right.
set the stage.
Okay. Then a couple of nitpicky items.
Yeah.
I assume we'll have all of the figures, the actual figures in the draft report. There's a lot of areas that are blank. So figure 1, I don't know what the numbers are, figure whatever, but they're just blank, at least in my copy. There's an area under data collection. It talks about the analysis of all the data, and then there's a sentence that jumps out with respect to cemeteries. They don't seem to link. I don't know how the cemeteries actually connects to the data collection. Maybe you could follow up on that. Then I thought it was intriguing, and I don't know where this came from, but there's a reference to Measure M, a park sales tax. And I'm not familiar with any park sales tax in Napa County as one of the sources for our park maintenance and our park renovation. I don't think that that's accurate. There is a lack of a reference in all of our different committees and commissions to our planning commission. We actually have a planning commission that should be put in there. That's pretty fundamental. Yeah, those are just little things that can be clarified and cleared up. If I didn't say them now, I would forget by tomorrow. So thank you.
Okay. And could you just clarify with your comments that these are efforts that you think could be worked out at a staff level so that it could come back in a format for us to consider, hopefully at the next meeting, or?
Yes, although I did that when we were talking about the contract for RST.
Yeah.
And I walked away from it thinking, hey, there's going to be some work done behind the scenes to my satisfaction. I wasn't entirely content with that, but yes, I trust that those things can get worked out.
Okay. Other comments? Commissioner Cottrell.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I mean, all this history is great to understand. I think there's also some history that should be in this MSR that I don't fully am not aware of, but that, with our ag preserve, we, the county and the city, it could be a slightly different scenario than, say, a city in another area that doesn't have an ag preserve, where the idea of expansion to bring in services makes sense. It was explained to me actually by my predecessor, and I think there is some legislation that Senator Dodd put in place that would make it possible for an extension of services outside the city, specific to the community of St. Helena. So I would love some paragraphs in here that kind of set out that situation.
Could I ask for indulgence? I think my city manager wanted to follow up on something in terms of the question whether this could be worked out. He may add something to that. Mr. McCann, is there anything else you want to add to that, or any other subject matter that may not be in the one? I know it's...
Yeah, thank you very much.
Through the chair.
Yes, I just wanted to bring attention to the last section on page 57, which relates a little bit to the comment you made about page 14. And so if we can just reconcile those, one says, think about it, the other one sort of says, we're not going to. That would be helpful. And then the legislation you're referring to was excellent, but it has expired. Thank you.
Okay, other comments? Yeah. Commissioner Ramos.
Thank you. I think one of to elaborate on what my colleague Commissioner Cottrell said, I think one of the things in looking at our own MSR policy, which is attachment 2 to this item, specifically on content, MSRs shall include, and then on number 2, an evaluation of the following matters related to effective or efficient services pursuant to Government Code 56430A7, and in particular has agricultural preserve and ag watershed open space and Measure J and Measure P included in there. And I think one of the parts in looking at this that felt, first of all, on page 13, I think figure 1 is missing. I didn't see it. It's not there, and I'm not sure why. It's blank. So maps are kind of important for LAFCO. So if we can make sure we can see that even after this meeting of what that figure 1 is. Number 2, I think relevant to this section on the what should be included in terms of content of an MSR, I think where it would belong is on page 12, preceding that figure 1, in having some sort of a description of the land use designations and the zonings surrounding the boundaries of the city of St. Helena. Because I think to the point that the city manager is making, if what they are looking for is to take step 2, which we've clearly said there are steps here, if what is being sought after is to have step 2, you can't have step 2 unless you know what's all encompassed in step 1, and St. Helena is not in a bubble. Not to say you're not important, Mayor, but St. Helena is not in a bubble, and it has existing land use designations around it, and that isn't clearly spelled out here. And so I think, I believe, but I'll leave it to staff and experts when we look at, in particular on page 12, jurisdictional boundary and sphere of influence. All of this is about St. Helena, and it doesn't, and spheres of influence are not insular to just the jurisdiction that is being reviewed. It's fluid as to the neighboring jurisdiction as well, because what in fact we're looking at are jurisdictional boundaries. So I think that this is probably where it would be appropriate, and that include the designations, the zoning, and as it relates to future annexations in utility service areas, because I think that's what is being asked that goes into the SOI. So there needs to be some sort of mention here on the MSR. But that also needs to include reference to our policies, section 3, on future organization of local government, right? So what would, if not this, then what? Right? And we can't say then what if we're not including what is the existing status quo of the county. Right? So I feel like we've got some gaps here, gaps that at least I see through our own application of our municipal service review policy. In regards to the Falcon Crest, near and dear to my heart. I used to be on site. It's not even a disclosure, but I'm going to make it anyways. I used to be on site for the filming of Falcon Crest when I was a kid, and in fact, I was background. I was one of the characters' nieces in background. So there's my.
That sure has changed.
What's that?
I said that sure has changed.
Right. And so what wasn't clear to me within the request of the city of St. Helena for this Falcon Crest Winery, if I'm looking at the maps, again, there are no maps in here, that is contiguous to existing city boundaries. And so that part, I think also, again, in light of section 3 regarding future organization of local government, it needs to identify that space contiguous and how those expanded uses would change and be evaluated from the lens of our own MSR policy. Now, when we get to the next part of the areas that are the southern corridor and then to the north, the Madrone Knolls area and beyond, I think that as that is incorporated in terms of identifying it for purposes of the municipal service review, I think that that definitely needs to be done within our own MSR policy VA5. VA5 discusses specifically how the lens through which you look at MSR and then the SOI for services that are beyond the existing sphere of influence. And I think we need to identify that, because if what is being asked is, should this be in the sphere of influence, you've got to say what is already outside of the sphere of influence. And then pair that up again with section 3, which talks about future organization and intensifications exceeding the current sphere of influence. So I feel like all of this kind of needs to wrap around and not just look at St. Helena as its own jurisdictional line, but what are those lines that are wanting to be discussed, and what those current designations and land use designations and zonings within the city are. Additionally, there's one part when we look at our MSR policy, and my apologies, I didn't write the actual policy number down because I've exceeded my number of daily allocated Post-it notes for the day. When it comes to fire, one of the things that we are to look at is efficiency of services. And there are some mention of co-location of services, but it doesn't seem complete, because one part of fire says they have their own fire department. They've gone from volunteer to career, and that is creating a greater fiscal impact to the city of Napa. And then it's like, sorry. Maybe a slip. Maybe that one's coming and I don't know just yet. I'm forecasting, just kidding. But to the city of St. Helena, and then it's like, period. And then later on, there's this mention of possible collaboration and coordination of services. Is the same person writing this? I guess I ask, how are we looking for internal consistency within this MSR? How are we matching this up with our own MSR policies? And how are we making sure that what is contained in this MSR can actually be sufficient for what comes next on the SOI? Because what I don't want to happen, and if we were to accept this as is right now, we'd get to the SOI and we'd say, there's not enough information, because it's not ensuring that this draft is not ensuring that everything that is already contained within our MSR policy is actually included.
Okay, so Brendan, do you want to respond to any of that, or are those comments that you just want to absorb and come back to us with?
I would love to respond in part. It won't be full, but just want to make a comment that indeed there were multiple different people at RSG writing this report at different times, and it caused some issues. And apologies about the missing map. I don't know how that happened. It may have been a conversion from Word to PDF issue. I thought it was in there. We missed that. And our staff, we've flagged a lot of issues in this report. We know it's not perfect, and we have to do some fine tuning here. So this is an example of a consultant written report. Staff inherited this without enough time to bring it up to the standards I think we all deserve. So we need to do that as part of the final report. And there's a lot of analysis being requested here that may or may not be possible to bring back in October. If we're going to do everything I'm hearing, it sounds like a heavy lift. I would be hesitant to say absolutely easily done. We can do our best working with city staff and come to some agreeable language for the report. Bring back in October. We'll do our best. It sounds like there's quite a bit of analysis needed, however, to address some of these issues being raised today.
Yeah, I don't quite see it that way. I think it's manageable amount of information. I would really try to encourage you to focus on exactly what's in there. I completely concur on the mapping issue, that we lay out, where are those 331 parcels that are outside service, so that we see where that is. And that we look at, and I know you said this, but I'm just going to repeat it because I think it's important, not just the city's general plan and zoning, but those contiguous county general plan and zoning, particularly those areas that are not ag, so that it's clear in a mapped form how those overlay. I think that's going to be really beneficial. I think we've all reviewed the letters. To me, I think this is something that could come back to us in October, so I would really strongly encourage that we try to do that. Okay. Other comments? I don't see any. So that was a really good discussion, good information, and we look forward to next steps on that particular item. I've lost my agenda. Here we go. So we are going on to agenda item 9. These are 2 action items. The first is consideration of approval of an amendment to the policy on unincorporated islands. We all got a copy of that. I think it's relatively straightforward. Brendan, do you want to just run us through that really quickly?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, this item comes to you with help from our ad hoc policy committee, which includes Vice Chair Ramos and Commissioner Gallagher. This item follows up on the recent ad hoc committee that was set up on islands, and we were exploring possible incentives or strategies to help cities annex the islands. And the conclusion of that discussion was that we're not looking to create a problem here, because there is no inherent problem. So we needed to fix our policy to soften the language a bit, which the previous version of the policy was a bit aggressive with some of the word choices, calling these islands an inherent problem that needs to be addressed, something to that effect. So we have softened the language. We have also changed the threshold for how we determine substantially surrounded islands. We used to have 50% or more surrounded, meaning if a city boundary surrounds an area by at least 50%, and if that area is within the city's sphere, it would be an island under current policy. We're raising that to 75% based on a review of other LAFCOs and recognizing the ad hoc committee's conclusion that we're not looking to proactively start a series of annexations here. So that pretty much summarizes the proposed amendments. The recommendation is to adopt the draft resolution amending the policy on unincorporated islands.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is an action item. I just want to say, as always, I appreciate the red line version so that we can quickly kind of get to what the heart of the changes are. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
I just had one comment. Thank you, Chair. Taking out item D that does not contain lands, Measure P is on the brain today. How do we square that so that we, because so often maybe we just don't ever have that situation, because we would have already had to. I'm just trying to think of a scenario where there's an island that is still zoned ag, that the other ones haven't been, but I'm not sure if we did have that situation, we would still run into the Measure P hurdle. So I'd love to hear the thoughts of Commissioner Ramos through the chair.
I appreciate that question. I think when we looked at this, one of the things is that is a county function and not a LAFCO function. I think that's principal to this. This is really stating LAFCO's position and how to identify islands and how to move forward with the annexation of those islands. When we had the opportunity to discuss between the city, I would say the city of Napa and the county, and we discussed how high of a priority is this. It is not. It seems that for a prior commission, perhaps it was, but as someone who represents, as a supervisor, a fair number of the islands, those property owners are very uninterested in changing. They very much enjoy their status quo. And this is a way of aligning the commission with that general sentiment of both city and county for the most part, because that's where these islands occur. And then knowing that anything that is Measure J or Measure P is a county function and not a LAFCO function.
Okay, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. My mistake. In my haste, I failed to mention why we're taking out. So specifically, we're taking out Section D and G because those were actually restrictions we put into our current policy that are. I know our council can speak to it a bit more eloquently than I can, but we're creating constraints that we're not legally allowed to create. We were preventing legal island annexations from moving forward with this language. And there is a difference between the definition of prime agricultural land versus what's Measure P or designated as agriculture. So that is a very important part of this. Thank you, Commissioner Cottrell, for flagging it.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. And Commissioner Khan.
So I appreciate your comment that it was really a hot item and it hasn't. As I remember, when the city of Napa chose to go into districts as opposed to just broad, that was the time when people were paying attention to that, because drawing those boundaries for the districts sometimes left holes. And I remember there were a few people who felt like they're being forced into, a big bottle of whatever. I mean, it was really interesting. Some people thought, well, that's a good idea. Other people were very concerned that they liked the things they were, they didn't care if they didn't have sidewalks. It was just very interesting. I happened to be involved with some people and they were just walking around asking. And that came up at that time. But as I remember, that's why it was hot. And then it kind of quieted down. I remember you and I, at the time that I was a realtor, I could go in and look at a lot of statistical data at the value of those homes, which I don't always have that access now. And it was very interesting because there were some islands that people bought those houses 20, 30, 40 years ago and never sold them. And so they were, a lot of rentals in those areas. But these, and then somebody told me, oh, this was where people started. I think it was, and then they went across to Bel Air. I mean, there was this stepping stone. But there were people who were like, no, I don't want to get involved, because they felt that all of a sudden their taxes would go up or their requirements to have sidewalks or grass. So that has kind of calmed down and put in there. Now, I irrespective of the changes of your definition, I think that's some of the reason that it became popular or a hot topic. And I haven't heard that language in a long time.
Well, I'll just jump in because that was my race in 2020. So that was, because I have a lot of islands in the district that I serve in, and I'm going to leave my city hat off and leave my LAFCO hat on, because I think really the point of this discussion is looking at our policy, which I think the language, in my view, has gone to really clarify and make it much more factual. I absolutely agree. Measure P is an important, critical issue, not relevant in this particular policy. So I'm supportive of the changes as proposed.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Cottrell, second by Commissioner Ramos. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is an important policy, and I appreciate your work. We're going to move, because I know we've got still quite a few things to talk about today, to item 9B, which is a discussion of a draft MSR and SOI work plan for the next 2 fiscal years, 26-27, 27-28. And really, the idea is to discuss scheduling a strategic planning workshop. I'm going to let Brendan talk more about it, but I just want to say, as I think I'm the Commissioner Crosswhite is not here. He and I are serving on this ad hoc committee that we set up to look at MSRs and SOIs. And we have done, we've had several meetings, we've done quite a bit to look at this. And rather than present an actual draft work plan, the idea is to provide a framework today, but consider looking at a longer discussion, hopefully before or after our next meeting. Brendan will explain that to you. But rather than focusing on the details of the draft plan that's in front of you, I'm hoping we can focus more on when we can have that larger conversation. So didn't mean to steal your thunder, but wanted to add that.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I'll skip some of the details I had on the work plan itself. This is really a starting point to show the commission where we are behind on our 5-year cycles that we try to stick to when we do our MSRs and sphere updates. And this is really just to show you what we could potentially do. However, staff has real concerns about the schedule that you're seeing in that draft work plan, and that is not a commitment that we can get that all done. And some of those items involve hiring consultants, some are in-house. This is all up for debate and can be done different ways. And staff is eager to hear the commission's thoughts on the different ways you'd like to see this work be done. And we believe strategic planning is a great opportunity for us all to get together and identify our priorities, challenges, opportunities, and how we want to set our process in a consistent manner moving forward as we do our MSRs and sphere studies and get back on track with our 5-year cycles as best as we can. So with that in mind, staff is recommending that the commission schedule strategic planning as soon as possible, truly, and the most ideal time might be the October 5th meeting, either right before or after that meeting. If that is to occur, we would likely need to secure a facilitator or have staff conduct or facilitate the strategic planning workshop. But there is an option to hire an outside facilitator. And if we do go the route of hiring an outside facilitator, we have a limit on how much we can spend without having to come back at a full commission meeting to discuss it and approve it. And that limit is $5,000, which may or may not be enough to find a truly solid facilitator. What it's up to you what you're looking for here. So if you're interested in strategic planning, staff is looking for guidance on when and who would be facilitating. So with that, I'll turn this item back to the commission.
Okay, and what I'm just going to add is there is a chart that's included in this that lists just the MSR studies and the SOI studies. And for those of you who remember who've been on LAFCO long enough, this work plan used to include a third section that was basically just some of the administrative work of the commission, as well as a few other sort of bells and whistles. We talked about climate change at one point as something to consider. The committee, the MSR and SOI committee, felt really pretty strongly that if we're going to look at a work plan, that we focus strictly on the MSR and SOI studies. We took that off because that's work that may or may not happen, but that we also look at where we are in terms of past due on some of these studies. So you'll see on that chart, there's information in terms of when a previous SOI was done, so that we tried to, and we haven't completed it yet, but tried to create a prioritized list as to which MSRs and SOIs should come first and how to prioritize that. And then also, in addition, try to look at each one in terms of level of difficulty as to which ones we know are going to warrant needing an outside consultant and which ones could be done in-house under a shorter timeline. So that's the longer discussion that I think we're hoping to have at some sort of a strategic planning workshop. What I would ask from my fellow commissioners is what else you might like to see in advance of that, and then the details of could we do it potentially, if you could look at your schedules, either before or after the October meeting. My preference is actually after because I have a bit of a conflict before, but I'm open to whatever the other commissioners might want to do, or an alternative date.
I would agree after October. We have a lot on our plate leading up to October.
Okay, so not do it after the meeting in October, but schedule it later at a later time. Okay.
Thank you for that, for the information and the follow-up. I have a couple of questions. I'm also fine waiting till after October. What is the current work plan that you're working off of?
So great question, Commissioner Cottrell. Current work plan essentially is limited to the 2 ongoing MSRs we're doing, which one was presented today, St. Helena. The other was referred to earlier, the fire and EMS MSR. So those are the only 2 studies we're actively working on.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question, because I think we adopted a work plan, right? What is that?
So technically we had a work program that has expired if we consider it based on 1 full year. So we had one that was supposed to run through the end of June 2026. It's not quite that structured in terms of this truly expires, where normally we would have had one adopted at our June meeting, which would generally go along with the budget process. And our budget committee did not have any recommendations at that time for a work program. Part of the issue, we lost a commissioner midway through who was on that committee. So we don't have a current work program unless we want to consider the last year's work program to be still current.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm less interested in the timeline than the tasks remaining on that work plan. So what are the tasks remaining on that work plan?
So we have a countywide fire and EMS MSR, and that is also, by the way, reflected in the draft as a continued item. We also have a City of St. Helena MSR, also noted as continue from fiscal year 25-26, and those are the only 2.
Those are the only 2 things on the work plan. Okay.
Everything else was completed. So there was a Napa Sand Sphere update completed, but there wasn't much on there.
Okay. So I guess my only hesitation in waiting until October is this is a really long list that I would like to encourage staff to get moving on. And also, Chair, you raised a good point that some of the discussion will be about how to prioritize this list. And I think a lot of that data will come from staff, just from staff directly, but also staff working with consultants to get some information. So perhaps what we could do at this point is give some direction that we need more information before we sit down to prioritize, right? So that we're not just getting that information at the time of the workshop.
Yeah, and I think there is some information there. So maybe sort of a middle ground could be that we meet as the ad hoc committee once more before the October meeting, and simply, at least at the October meeting, if there's time on the agenda, provide an update, and then we can consider a future strategic planning session. But it sounds to me like doing it at the meeting in October is probably not feasible.
I think that makes sense, and I like your suggestion because I think that allows us to hopefully narrow the scope of the workshop so that we really know what things are rising to the surface.
Okay.
If you and the ad hoc are comfortable with
Yeah, I think we can do one or at least one, if not 2 additional meetings before the October meeting and provide some feedback. So other comments?
It seems like government is always on a hamster wheel, particularly with respect to strategic plans. So in my view, we've done one, and I think it would be beneficial to maybe have the staff send us a copy of the existing plan. I know it's on there, but maybe just have a brief discussion in October. Say, here's the plan. Here's how it's working. Here are some of the things that we need to improve. Here's why it's not working. Okay. Start from there as the baseline, like here it is, kind of give us some brainstorming ideas about what it is that we have now. I think that would be helpful for me. And I know I can go online, but maybe a page from the staff saying, some of this is it was great work, but here's why it's changed, and here's why we need to go in a different direction, or here's what we can incorporate. So building on the existing strategic plan would be helpful, I think, for the organization.
Okay, good. Well, I think we have consensus then. We'll do a report back in October and take it from there. Thank you. No other comments? Then let's move on. We do on our agenda have opportunity for the executive officer report. We also have a closed session item. So do you have a report for us today?
Not today.
Perfect. That's not a problem.
Just take just another 20 minutes here. Okay.
Yeah, we know how hard you've been working, so no, that's all good. Any commissioner comments or any other requests for future agenda items? I think we've covered that as well.
I'm going to say no at this point.
Okay, good. Then I'd like to move to item 12, which is our closed session, and look to our council to provide us with a brief summary.
Yes, thank you. Chair and Commissioners, there are 4 items on your closed session agenda this afternoon. First one is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Separate counsel Ruben Cruz is here. He will be joining you for that for the reasons we discussed at our last meeting, and I will leave the room for that discussion. The next one is initiation of litigation, and then there are 2 related items, performance evaluation and labor negotiations, both related to the executive officer.
Okay, thank you for that summary. So we can remain in this room, I believe, for closed session. Is that right? Okay.
That's correct.